It started with a weekend I never expected to change everything. My husband, Daniel, had gone out of town for a business conference in Chicago, and primera stayed been in San Diego to catch up on some work, and spent time with my sister, who had recently remarried. Her new husband brought along his son from a previous marriage. Jason, my new stepbrother. Jason was 28, 6 years younger than me, with messy dark hair.
Ocean blue eyes. And this effortless way of making anyone feel like they were the only person in the room. He was confident but not arrogant, charming without trying. And when he smiled at me the first night we met, something in my stomach twisted in a way I hadn't felt in years. I brushed it off as nerves, or maybe wine, but deep down I already knew I was in trouble. The second night after dinner, we all decided to stop at a little cafe downtown. It was cute, cozy, and quiet, with jazz playing softly and the scent of espresso in the air. I had worn a silky black blouse with a neckline just suggestive enough to feel dangerous, and tight jeans that clung to my hips. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, or at least that's what I told myself when I caught Jason's eyes drifting toward my chest while he sipped his coffee. Our conversation was casual at first, but there was this undercurrent, attention neither of us named, but both of us leaned into. And then I excused myself to go to the bathroom, and when I opened the door to step out, he was there, leaning against the hallway wall like he'd been waiting for me. I laughed nervously and asked if he was lost, and he just looked at me with those blue eyes and said quietly, "No, I think I just found something I didn't know I needed." He moved closer, and before I could respond, his hand was on my waist, guiding me back into the restroom, locking the door behind us. My breath caught as his mouth found mine, his hands sliding under my blouse, fingers grazing over skin that hadn't been touched like that in so long. I should have stopped him. I should have told him this was insane, that we were practically family, that I was married. But instead I let myself fall. I kissed him back, hard, desperately, like I was trying to drink in years of missing something I couldn't name. He lifted me onto the sink, and the cool porcelain against my thighs only heightened the heat between us. His mouth moved to my neck, my shoulder, his hands making quick work of the button on my jeans. I moaned softly, biting down on my lip, terrified someone would hear, but not caring nearly enough to stop. And then he was inside me, and I gasped. The shock of it, the danger, the forbidden thrill curling around us like smoke. He moved with a rhythm that was hungry but controlled, his breath hot in my ear, and every thrust sent shivers down my spine. I clenched my fingers in his hair, arching into him, and we moved together in perfect, frantic silence until everything exploded in a rush of trembling release. I buried my face in his neck, breathless, dizzy, a little horrified but more alive than I'd felt in years. He whispered, "You okay?" And I just nodded, not trusting my voice to say anything that made sense. After we slipped out one at a time, we didn't speak about it, not right away. We returned to the table, back to our families, pretending nothing had happened, but my body still tingled with the memory of him. And every time I looked at him across that small wooden table, my pulse jumped. We didn't exchange numbers, we didn't make any promises. But that night started something I couldn't stop. The next few days were torture in the most delicious way. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face above mine, felt his breath on my skin, remembered the way he gripped my hips, like he couldn't bear to let go. He stayed at my sister's place, just 20 minutes from my house, and I found excuses to go over, bringing wine, helping with errands, pretending to bond more with my new extended family. But every visit had an undercurrent of something else. My fingers would brush his when we passed plates at dinner. I'd feel his eyes on me when I bent over to pick something up, the heat of that stare setting off a wildfire low in my belly. Then one afternoon, a week after that night in the cafe, I stopped by under the pretense of dropping off some homemade banana bread. My sister was out. getting her nails done. Jason was alone. His smirk when he opened the door told me everything I needed to know. I stepped inside, the tension between us like a taut wire ready to snap. He didn't even wait for me to speak. He just pulled me in by the wrist, slammed the door shut, and kissed me like he'd been starved for it, for me. I dropped the Tupperware on the floor and tangled my hands in his shirt, pulling him toward the couch. Our clothes came off in a messy trail across the living room, our bodies colliding with that same furious hunger that had taken over us in the cafe bathroom. He was rougher this time, more confident, his mouth exploring every inch of me like he was memorizing my reactions. I cried out when his tongue found that sweet, aching spot between my legs, his hands gripping my thighs like he never wanted to let go. And when he slid inside me again, it felt like something clicked into place, like this was where I was, always meant to be, even though I knew it was wrong, even though I knew I'd have to go home to Daniel and pretend everything was normal. I didn't care. Not in that moment. Not when Jason's lips were on mine, whispering things that made my spine arch and my breath catch. We fell into a rhythm after that. An unspoken arrangement. Midday meetups in the backseat of my car. Secret texts sent from the bathroom. Occasional stolen weekends when Daniel went golfing with his colleagues. I told myself it was just sex. But it wasn't. Not anymore. There was a night, late in July, when he came to my house while Daniel was at a client dinner. It was risky, stupid even. But I needed him. And when he walked in, dripping from the rain, hair tousled and eyes hungry, I lost all sense of caution. I stripped for him slowly, right there in the living room, letting him watch as I peeled off each layer like a promise. He took his time with me that night, slow and tender, like he was savoring every moment. His fingers laced with mine as he moved inside me, and I found myself whispering his name, like a prayer. I slept in his arms on my own damn couch, and when I woke up to the soft light of morning on his bare shoulder, I felt something crack open in my chest. This wasn't just lust anymore. This was something deeper. Something dangerous. And I had no idea how to stop. I started lying more than I ever had in my life. It became so easy I scared myself. A quick smile, a kiss on the cheek, a story about traffic or yoga, or a friend's emergency. I told Daniel what he needed to hear and kept the rest tucked away in the tight, pulsing place between my legs where Jason lived now. I thought I could control it, that I could keep my two worlds from touching. But emotions are messy things, and Jason wasn't just sex anymore. He started showing up in my thoughts at odd times when I was folding laundry, stirring pasta, watching some stupid show on Netflix with Daniel. I'd feel my phone buzz and my heart would stutter, hoping it was him. Sometimes it was. And just the sight of his name made me wet, like my body was permanently rewired for him. Then there were the moments that broke the rules completely, like the time he met me at a boutique hotel near the coast. I wore a long red dress with nothing underneath, and the second I opened the door, he pushed me against the wall, his hands yanking up the hem as he dropped to his knees. He didn't say a word, just slid his tongue against me until I was shaking, clutching his hair, my back arching off the wall in sweet surrender. He knew every inch of me by then, every sound I made, every little movement that meant I was about to fall apart. And he loved watching me unravel. It gave him this smug little grin that only made me crave him more. We made love on the bed after that, slow and deep. The kind of sex where time disappears and your name stops meaning anything, because you're just breath and pulse and skin. I remember lying there afterward, the sheets tangled between our legs, his fingers tracing circles on my bare stomach. And he looked at me like I was the only woman left in the world. "You're not happy with him," he said softly. I didn't answer because he wasn't wrong, but admitting it out loud would make it real. And I wasn't ready for real yet. So I kissed him. Instead, tried to swallow the truth along with his tongue, and hoped it would go away. It did and single quotes T. It followed me home, into my bedroom, into the quiet spaces between Daniel's sentences when he asked how my day had been. I hated how easy it was to lie to him and still feel nothing. I hated how I stopped caring about whether or not he touched me anymore, because Jason had ruined me. For other men, including my own husband. Even when I tried to cut things off once I told Jason it was too dangerous. That I had to end it. That I loved my husband, he just smiled, nodded, leaned in close, and whispered, "Then why do you keep coming back?" And then he kissed me, and all my reasons died on my lips. I slept with him that same night on the hood of my car in a dark parking lot like some goddamn teenager, and it was glorious. Every moan echoed off the metal. Every thrust made the entire vehicle tremble beneath us. And when I came, I bit down on his shoulder to keep from screaming his name. I left bite marks. That was the night I stopped pretending I had control. We started to fall into a rhythm that felt dangerously close to a relationship. He'd bring me little things of vanilla latte because he remembered I hated pumpkin spice. A playlist he made with songs. That reminded him of the way I looked after sex. Even a silk scarf once that he tied around my wrists in the back seat of my car before pulling my panties to the side and making me come so hard I cried. I told myself it was still just physical, that I could turn it off whenever I needed to. But deep down I knew that was a lie. I craved him in ways that made me restless when I was home, distracted when I was out, and hollow when we were apart. There were nights when Daniel would roll over in his sleep and place his hand on my thigh, and I'd flinch because it felt wrong. Wrong because it wasn't Jason Dodd, and Jason knew it. He started pushing, softly at first. "A question here, a look there. Do you ever think about leaving him?" He asked once as we lay naked on a blanket in the back of his truck, parked on some quiet hill outside the city. My breath caught, but I didn't answer. He didn't push me, just kissed my shoulder and pulled me tighter into him like he was already claiming something I wasn't ready to give. But he didn't have to ask. I was already imagining it. Imagining waking up next to him, drinking coffee while he teased me in that slow, lazy voice, making love in the middle of the afternoon just because we could. No guilt, no hiding, no pretending. But then I'd go home and see Daniel reading the paper, or folding my laundry, or telling me about some deal he was negotiating, and I'd feel this wave of shame crash over me because he didn't deserve any of it. He wasn't cruel or cold or inattentive. He was kind, responsible, and mostly predictable. And maybe that was the problem, because Jason was the opposite of predictable. He was wild energy and whispered filth and hungry eyes that saw through every excuse I made to stay comfortable. And the more I tasted him, the more bland everything else became. I started dressing differently, tighter skirts, low-cut tops, a new red lipstick I never would have worn before. I wasn't doing it for Daniel. I was doing it for Jason, because I wanted to watch his eyes darken when he saw me. I wanted to feel his hand slip up my thigh under the table. When we had coffee at that same little cafe, the one where it all began, I wanted to feel that thrill again, the electric danger of almost being caught, of pretending to be normal in public while his fingers were buried inside me beneath the tablecloth. He made me feel like a woman again, not just a wife, not just a function, but a living, breathing, aching creature who needed to be taken, used, worshipped Dodd, and he loved doing all of that. He once told me I had the kind of body that made men ruin their lives. I laughed, thinking he was joking until I saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't a joke, it was a warning. And I still didn't stop. It got to a point where I started scheduling my life around him. I'd cancel plans with friends, fake appointments, lie about errands just to carve out an hour of his time. I became a master of misdirection. A smile here, a soft lie there, Kisses for Daniel with the taste of Jason still on my tongue. I was balancing on a wire stretched over fire, and somehow I loved the heat. I'd sneak out on Sunday mornings, claiming I was going for a run, when really I'd drive to Jason's loft downtown and let him take me against the kitchen counter. Before the coffee even brewed, his place always smelled like cedar and sweat and something distinctly male. And every time I stepped inside, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. His hands would be on me before I could shut the door, his mouth devouring mine like we'd been starved for days. His favorite thing was bending me over whatever surface was closest the back of the couch, the edge of the bed, the cold marble of his bathroom sink hand, fucking me until my legs gave out and my throat was raw from moaning. He made me feel obscene in the best way possible, like I was made for sin, and he was the only man who'd figured that out. He'd pull my hair, call me his filthy girl, whisper all the things he wanted to do to me next while I begged him not to stop. And then he wouldn't stop. He'd keep going until I was clawing at the walls, my body trembling from the kind of pleasure that made me forget my name. Sometimes afterward, he'd cook for me eggs, toast, avocado, shirtless, and smug, while I sat at the counter in nothing but one of his t-shirts, legs still trembling. He made everything feel effortless, natural, inevitable. And slowly, he stopped being my secret and started feeling like my truth. But secrets have a way of rotting from the inside. They don't stay neatly folded in the corners of your life. They bleed. They stain. One afternoon, I came home to Daniel sitting on the couch with a photo album in his lap. He looked up and smiled, said he'd been feeling nostalgic, remembering our honeymoon in Greece. And I felt nothing. Not guilt, not warmth, not longing. Just this dull numbness in my chest, like I was watching someone else's life from across a glass wall. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the tub staring at my reflection. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. Her lips were swollen from someone else's kisses. Her eyes were heavy with secrets. Her body ached for a man who wasn't her husband. And yet there was no regret. Not really. Just this simmering need for the next time, the next lie, the next high. Because Jason had become an addiction, and I didn't want rehab. The more I gave into Jason, the less I could stomach the pretense of my marriage. I started avoiding Daniel in small ways, going to bed earlier, pretending to be asleep when he reached for me, volunteering to run errands just to be out of the house. He noticed. Of course. He wasn't stupid. He started asking quiet, careful questions. His voice always soft, like he was afraid of the answers. Is everything okay between us? You've seemed distant lately. I'd smile, stroke his cheek, kiss him softly, tell him I was just tired, just stressed, just in a weird place emotionally. I knew how to lie. I'd become fluent in it. And Daniel wanted to believe me so badly. He accepted every excuse like a man drinking water in the desert. But I was no longer his oasis. Jason had become my entire climate. One afternoon, after a fake appointment and a stolen art in Jason's bed, I was walking to my car barefoot, heels in hand, blouse half buttoned, when he called after me with that cocky grin. "You're going to leave him someday," he said, like a fact, not a hope. I turned around, heart pounding, and asked, "And then what?" "We play house." He just walked toward me, slow and sure, wrapped his arms around my waist and whispered, "Now." We stopped playing, and when he kissed me, everything else disappeared. The air, the noise, the cars, the risk. All I could feel was him, and I wanted to believe him. God. I wanted to believe that we could exist outside of the shadows, but something always held me back. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe fear. Or maybe I just liked the fire too much to step out of it. Because our sex had taken on a darker edge by then, more urgent. more unrestrained. Like, we were both trying to consume each other before the whole thing collapsed. I remember one night in particular he took me in the stairwell of a parking garage downtown. My dress pushed up to my waist. His hand over my mouth while he drove into me like he couldn't get deep enough. I came so hard I saw stars, clutching the railing while his breath shuddered against my neck. And when it was over, I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was this wild, breathless thing that bubbled up from inside me and refused to be quiet. And Jason just smiled like I was the most beautiful disaster he'd ever seen. "You're mine," he said, teeth grazing my ear. And I didn't argue, because I wasn't just cheating on Daniel anymore. I was cheating on the life I thought I was supposed to. Cheating on the version of me who played it safe, who smiled through quiet. Dinners and missionary sex and polite conversations about mortgage rates. I was cheating on all of it. For him, for this. For the way he made me feel like I was fire in a world that only ever asked me to be warm. It ended on a Thursday, not with a fight, not with a confession, but with a silence that said more than either of us could. I had just left Jason's place. My hair still damp from his shower. The taste of him still lingering on my lips when Daniel called. He almost never called me in the middle of the day. His voice was calm but off. "Hey," he said, "I made a reservation for tonight. That little Italian place you like. Just us." And for some reason, my heart dropped. I said sure, like always, like nothing was different. And then sat in my car for 10 full minutes, staring at the steering wheel, trying to breathe. I didn't go home. I drove to the cliffs instead, the ones overlooking the water. I watched the waves crash, let the wind pull my hair back, and tried to remember who I was before this. Before Jason. Before the ache. Before I became someone who couldn't look her husband in the eyes without flinching. And for the first time, I felt the weight of it, not the lust, not the thrill, but the cost. I thought about what I was doing to Daniel. Not just the lies, but the hollowing out of something that used to be whole. I thought about what I was doing to myself. To Jason. Because we'd stopped being a secret affair and started becoming a habit, a need, a tether. I didn't know how to cut without bleeding. I met Daniel that night. I wore a simple black dress, no lipstick, no perfume. Just me. He smiled when he saw me, but there was sadness in it. Like he already knew, but was waiting to see if I'd admit it. I didn't. We ate pasta. We talked about weather and work and people we hadn't seen in a while. And then, over dessert, he reached across the table and took my hand. "Are you in love with someone else?" The question landed so softly I almost didn't hear it. But I did, and I couldn't lie this time. I couldn't look into the eyes of the man who once made me feel like the luckiest woman in the world and pretend any more. So I just nodded. Once. Tiny. But enough. He looked down, exhaled through his nose, and said, "Okay." No yelling. No drama. Just heartbreak. So quiet it felt like a prayer. I moved out a week later. Jason helped. He was sweet, gentle, tried to be excited about us finally being free. But I could feel at this invisible shift, this new weight between us, because what we had only worked in the dark. And now we were standing in the light. Real life has no thrill of secrecy, no adrenaline, no urgency. And without the danger, we were just two people with too much history and not enough future. We tried for a while. Dinners, weekend trips, lazy mornings tangled in sheets. Without guilt. But something was gone. The fire had been fun while it burned, but no one talks about the ashes. We lasted 3 more months before we ended it. No drama. Just quiet understanding. I packed a bag one morning and kissed his cheek before I left. He didn't stop me, didn't ask me to stay, just closed the door behind me and went back inside like we'd never burned the world down together. Now I live alone, in a small apartment with big windows and quiet mornings. I make my own coffee. I sleep in the middle of the bed. And sometimes, when I pass that cafe downtown, I still think about the first time I kissed a man who wasn't my husband in a bathroom. That smelled like espresso and guilt. I don't regret it. Not really. But I don't crave it anymore, either, because some stories are meant to be chapters, not endings. And this one ended exactly when it had to.